Hello everyone and welcome to my webinar on how to reduce over-servicing within agencies. Today I'm going to be looking into reasons in which agencies are over-servicing and also how this can be reduced. I'm going to be demonstrating some areas of a project management tool which we use here at the Agency Works and we also implement and sell. Now, whether you're using Excel, whether you're using a number of different tools or a project management system, this should be relevant for all of you in terms of the processes in which I'll be demonstrating. So I'd just like to start by introducing who we are as a company and also introducing myself. So my name is Frankie and I work for the Agency Works. We are the implementation partner of the project management tool called Synergist, hence my reason for demonstrating that throughout the webinar, just slightly. But also, we not only sell the project management system, but we also work alongside agencies in things such as, looking into their business processes. Okay, so hence the reason for this webinar being on the subject how to reduce over-servicing. That's something that we quite often see within agencies and that we, work with them to help reduce one of these particular issues. So without further ado, the topics in which we're going to be looking into today are why are agencies over-servicing and also how can over-servicing be reduced. Okay, and just to start, I wanted to share this particular statistic with you. So we have something called the Agency Food Group, which is just a LinkedIn group for like-minded individuals like yourselves, which work within agencies, looking at the good and the bad aspects of agencies. Now, one of the biggest challenges which we keep seeing on these survey results, which we have, I think, about over 100 people doing the surveys. So the results keep coming through that over-servicing is still the number one main challenge agencies face. And this has an effect on things like efficiency and profitability. So looking into how we can reduce this is what we're going to do today. And one of the main areas in how to reduce over-servicing and how is how to basically what you need is visibility, and you also need a good process in place. So we're going to be looking at the type of visibility that you need and also the processes in which will help reduce over-servicing if you have them in place. Okay, so first topic, why are agencies over-servicing? Now, from working with agencies for over 20 years or so and from doing lots of surveys, obviously implementing project management systems into them as well, we've come up with 6 main reasons. Number one being the agencies are not selling enough hours. And when I say not selling enough hours, what I mean is not selling enough hours as to what they have available based on their resource. So obviously with each resource, and I'll be looking into this a bit further in a second, but with each resource you'll have different utilization rates, so you'll be able to get a different number of hours in which you can sell chargeable work for each. But knowing how many hours you have to sell and not selling enough will cause other issues such as inaccurate estimating, spending too much time on the job in particular, also human error, and finally using a different resource, and the client moves goalposts. Okay, so these are the main issues in which we have discovered are the reasons for agencies over-servicing. So these are the ones that we're going to be focusing on in today's webinar. So let's start by looking into, okay, so we now know some of the reasons in which agencies are over-servicing. How can this be reduced? So going back to what I just mentioned, the first one is looking at and knowing how many hours you have available to sell within the agency. Now, a little tip which we would always recommend is actually trying to sell more hours that you have available. Because obviously the client may move the goalposts before the job even starts. So you may think, yes, in this month we've got this number of hours available based on the utilization rates of each of our resource and the number of chargeable hours that we can get out of each of them. However, obviously the client can move the goalposts before the job even starts. So trying to sell a few more hours than you have available is always recommended. If you don't sell the number of hours that you have available, this is where over-servicing can occur, because the resource, which are things like the designers, the developers, the resource that are actually carrying out the work, they end up spending too much time on in particular jobs because they haven't got anything else to do. So ensuring that you're selling enough hours by doing a simple calculation, which you can see on the screen there, will work out how many chargeable hours you can get out of each of your resource, or in this case, I've broken it down into teams. So a massive help within any agency. Okay, the next area, one of the reasons for over-servicing that I mentioned before was inaccurate estimating. So one thing that we always suggest, and again, whether you're using Excel, a project management tool, or a number of different tools, one key area is always having your estimate separate to your quote. And I know some agencies do this, but I also know other agencies don't. So your estimate should always be an internal budget, a really accurate estimate on how many hours you need to deliver the client's brief. So at the estimating stage, it's internal and you're not taking the client's budget into consideration, okay? Because if the client, what we see in some agencies is, say they've got a budget, you'll then fit the hours to meet that budget, based on not basing it on the brief. Whereas what you should do is you should be looking at the brief and saying, right, if they want this piece of work, this is the number of hours, any purchases, any time, and materials, of course, taken into account as well, that we should be selling it for. And based on the charge rates, this is the recommended charge for this job. Now, if the client's got a budget that does not fit within there, okay, what you shouldn't do is reduce the hours to fit in with the client's budget, because then those hours that are being given to the resource are going to be inaccurate. Okay, so the resource are basically being set up to fail because they're not being given the right number of hours to carry out that type of job. So this is what then brings me on to having a separate estimate to the quote. So your quote is then basically your commercial estimate. So the estimate's internal, what should we be charging based on the brief of the client. The quote is, okay, what should we sell it for? Okay, so the quote should be where you can manipulate the value on the job if needed. You may want to reduce that, or you might want to increase the value on it for whatever reason. One of the reasons could be if it's new business, you might want to add a bit of a discount. It could be that you've got a really loyal client of yours, so you can afford to give that client a bit of discount, or it may be that you've under or over recovered on previous jobs for the particular clients. Again, another reason why you may want to manipulate it. But if there is any manipulation, it should always be done in the quote, not the estimate, because the estimate is going to be what's basically running through the studio and being evaluated against the actuals coming through as well. Okay, this then brings me on to trying to reduce that human error using a different resource, and also spending too much time on a job. So if you've got a really, really accurate estimate, what you should then be able to do is schedule those estimated hours onto the resource, knowing that for that piece of work, we've estimated it really accurately, whether we've sold it for that or not on the quote, but we've estimated it really accurately. Therefore, when we give it to the resource, we know that they should be able to do the work within that time frame given. So using a simple tool, like I said, whether you do this in Excel, using a tool, or a project management system, I've got an example of like just a typical kind of scheduler here. You can see at the bottom we've got the estimated hours, and at the top we've got all of our resource. Simply by giving those estimated hours to the resource, it will give them the required number of hours that they've got for each of the jobs. Okay, so it just makes, to be honest, it makes them feel a bit more comfortable as well, because they know what's required of them for the particular jobs. And if for any reason the job they needed more hours, that then also gives them the ability to go back to either the account handler or the project manager, whoever's handling that job, and say, you've estimated this number of hours, however, it's a bit bespoke. So actually, I think I'm going to need a few more hours, in which case you can adjust the estimate. Okay. The next area is time recording. So obviously giving those estimated hours to the resource and then ensuring that they're recording time very accurately is also very key. If you can try and get them to record accurate time, that will give you evaluation on things like their utilization rates. So you can even start evaluating whether you can perhaps get more chargeable hours out of a particular resource. It will also enable you to look at the estimate versus the actual on the job. So if the client were to move the goalpost, you'd be able to go back and say, right, well, this is what we originally estimated based on your brief. You'd be able to look at the time that's been recorded, okay? And you'd also be able to look at any notes that are recorded against that job with the time. And you can say, well, actually, this is where we've gone over. It may be that you've got 3 phases to a job and you've spent all of your budget within that first phase. And I'm actually just going to quickly switch over to the Synergist system. Okay, and if we look at this jobs tab here, what we can see on the right hand side where my mouse is a thermometer showing us how far through the budget we are. Now what that's doing, and again, whether you use Excel or whether you use a system, you should have something that's tracking your estimate versus your actual. If that estimate's accurate, that thermometer should be in relation to the work that is being carried out. So if we've estimated 10 hours of a job, 5 hours have been recorded, these thermometers will be at 50%. Now, what this enables you to do is go in and say, right, so we're 50% of the way through our budget, okay? Are we 50% of the way through the work? If we're not, why? Is it because we've had human error? Is it because we've used a different resource? Or is it because the client's moved the goalpost? Okay, or is it because we haven't sold enough hours within the agency? So actually, our resources are spending too much time on the job because they've not got anything else to do. Okay, or is it that the estimate is inaccurate to begin with? So tracking those estimate versus actual will help actually reduce all of those reasons for over servicing. So that's a really, really key point. Okay, and now, following a nice process will help reduce all of this, as I've mentioned. So ensuring that you're estimating accurately, you're doing your quote separate to your estimate, ensuring that the time you're given to your studio is from that accurate estimate, ensuring that the guys are recording time against the job. So you can get an evaluation like this, looking at the estimate versus the actual. By clicking into a job, we can see here we've estimated 7 hours of a senior designer, and we can look at the actuals coming through. Okay, so ensuring that we've got all of those processes in place will massively help reduce over servicing, but also ensuring that we've got visibility on it. Okay, so it's all well and good having the processes in place, but then we need the visibility. So we need the reporting that comes out the back of that. So things like keeping track of just even having just a simple chart like I've got in this example here. So looking at the available hours and on a monthly, maybe even weekly basis, ensuring that you are selling those hours that you have available. Okay, also setting targets, which we can see on the right hand side there. So setting targets on value that you want to be sold for maybe your new business team. Another area, if I just flip to my example of a management dashboard, is ensuring that your staff utilization rates are up. That will give you the ability to see, maybe we can get a few more chargeable hours out of this particular resource as well. And another thing is looking at your client profitability. So ensuring that this one here, that you've got a nice even balance on something like this pie chart. So your eggs aren't all in one basket. And that you are, again, as I keep mentioning, getting those hours through. Okay, so just flipping back to my slides. just some of the tips in which I have gone through, just to kind of summarize really. So, the top tips for reducing over servicing are estimating accurately and honestly, scheduling those hours from the estimate, which should be accurate. That will then give the studio team a good visibility on, right, this is the number of hours that that I'm required to carry out based on what has been scheduled to me, based on the particular job. Always record time against the jobs so you can report on your estimate versus your actual. That will enable you to spot patterns and perhaps make the estimate more accurate. Also, to see if the client has moved the goalposts, where have they moved them? We can then give them evidence that they've moved them in particular areas as well. Okay. And then finally, having all features integrated, again, whether you're using Excel or whether you're using a project management system, having those not necessarily features actually, but processes integrated. So ensuring that the estimated hours are going into the studio team are recording back to that estimate, will help reduce those issues for reasons for over servicing hugely. Okay. By following these processes and by using the right tools and getting the right visibility, it will give visibility to make more informed business decisions. It may be that the reason that you're over servicing on one particular job type is because you're using the wrong resource. It may also be that one of your clients keeps moving the goalposts. By having evidence of that, it will enable you to make, like I said, more informed business decisions. We've also got improved organization and stability within the business. So, ensuring that when you're given the correct number of hours to the resource, they will have the stability to know exactly what's required of them. The account handlers or the project managers tracking those jobs will also have the stability within the business to look and see why jobs may be going over. Okay, or where you may be over servicing for particular clients. And finally, that will lead to happier staff, happier clients, and obviously happier management. So it's win win win. um, Now, obviously, I've run out of time now. Sorry, I have gone a couple of minutes over. I do just want to finish by popping a poll out there, and here are my contact details if anyone would like more information on the topics in which I've discussed today. Also, if you would like any more information on upcoming webinars, please do just drop me an email. You can see my email addresses there. And I will be happy to send information over. I'm just going to now select this poll. So if you wouldn't mind answering, how informative did you find the webinar? It would be much appreciated. If anyone has any feedback, again, please don't hesitate to drop me an email. It's always welcome. Okay, thank you ever so much for the results in that poll. I hope that you all found it useful, and I look forward to seeing you on more webinars in the future. Thanks ever so much, guys. Bye.